So when you look at Australia, I think when we were talking here last year about, well, China's coming and China is still coming, but China's overtaken Japan as our biggest value export market. Collectively, Japan, Singapore, Malaysia do combine to more value than China alone. So it's not just a China story, but it's a similar story playing out across the rising populations and shifting middle class of Asia. To support a diet that's mainly dairy and animal protein requires 2.5 times more water and 3 times more land to produce that diet, and that's just not simply available to the growing populations of Asia especially, and that's something that plays to a strength of Australia, albeit we do have seasonal variation across industries. So around 26, 28 million people per annum rising into the middle class of China every single year, equivalent to our entire Australian population. As a country, it consumes in litres equivalent around 45 billion litres of milk. It produces itself around 36 billion litres. So its import gap at around 9 odd billion litres is the entire dairy production in Australia. And thinking about this gap doubling as life goes on has enormous implications for our industry. It becomes very clear that their own production attempts will not keep up with consumption, and this growing import need will get larger and larger. There needs to be some kind of change to bring about not just increasing milk production from our own farmers, but to encourage investment in a way that's practical, so that we can invest in technology and bring new money and markets and ways to our industry at the farm level as well.
As a business across the whole state in dairy, we see so many different management practices. A lot of them are successful, some of them aren't. I think there's a lot of potential in the dairy herd. If you look at what our production is, let's say it's 5,500 litres per cow, we believe the genetic potential is probably only 60% of the genetic potential. To incentivise these people to get that extra production out gets back to marginal feed costs. And if you think you're going to do it at 42 cents a litre, you're not. I believe the story of demand. I'm a sceptic about these people getting enough money to incentivise themselves to actually produce more. Now, I hope I'm wrong, because I think we'll play a big part in the extra volume that will come from it. We look at our business, and too often we see what we call non-profit volume, and that's across all species, whether it be pigs or egg industry or the dairy industry. And I think some of the big change with dairying is a lot of that non-profit volume starting to disappear, but they're concentrating a lot more on their bottom line.
In terms of sort of the China FTA, looking at that in the sort of time period, I suppose, in which you might see a benefit of it, you're looking at the eventual removal of all the dairy tariffs that Australia currently faces, and you mentioned earlier on the fact that New Zealand's really made the most of having their FTA with China, and that helps to put us on a level playing field, or a more level playing field with New Zealand in that respect. For some of our major products, skim milk powder, whole milk powder, you're looking at to add 11 years through your phase down period. Cheese and butter about 4 to 9, and infant formula around 4 years. So it is probably sort of medium to longer term benefit on those tariff reductions, and seeing that pass back through the supply chain and the product mix.
For me, the revenue side of it's a concern in the medium term, and without moving sideways too much, and it's not for me to come into the lion's den here at the Wandle Cheese and Butter Factory to criticise processor pricing behaviour, but that's certainly not what I'm about here. But there needs to be greater certainty so that the farming community can build more confidence for investment decisions, and so some sort of confidence as to future prices, contracts and so forth. I think that's what's really needed in the industry. Whilst I think most of us in the bottom of our hearts would prefer that we retain control, and that something as vital as premium farming assets remain in the hands of our farmers, Australian farmers, that globalisation and with that element of perhaps lack of investment from the investment community in Australia, that we're wishing to trade with other countries, we're going to have to probably acknowledge that there might be a bit of two sides to that.
Well, wind the clock back 12 months and look at the last 12 months on the global market, so we're talking Chicago futures. There's been a trading range of around 100 cents, so maybe 120 cents. So currently, if you look at Chicago today, it's about the same level as it was 12 months ago. So if the currency had stayed at 94 cents, Melbourne market today for wheat's about $2.90. If it had stayed at 94 cents, Melbourne wheat today would be $2.40. So roughly rule of thumb, for every cent drop in currency, you've got $4. So there's $50 of currency movement in grain price in the last 12 months. What that means here is largely the east coast of Australia has been the dearest, or it is the dearest place in the world still for wheat. Hence we've got less export activity happening at the moment. The basis yesterday probably put the Australian market at its most competitive for a lot of months. But going on the shipping stem, we still don't see a lot of export activity. The ship's booked, that'll go out, but it's not the activity we expected. So it's currency has a big play. And I'll just touch on the point talking about pricing of milk over a lot longer period. That would assist you people in taking a longer term view of your feed price and how you can hedge that. With such a short cycle in milk pricing, it's extremely difficult for you to hedge. We do a lot of work in the egg industry and the pig industry. Those guys are on a lot longer pricing plane, and they take positions quite regularly when they can see that they've got profit or margin over cost. We don't see that same activity in the dairy industry. We'd like to. I think if you all wandered back to about September last year, there's some pretty good prices floating around for grain. Some of our people who were smart enough took it up, and I'm sure other companies had the same, but a lot of you didn't, and the market's $50 away from that price today.
You know, get your financials right, understand where you are in your business with your advisors, take it to your bankers and just talk together about where you're at and what the possibilities are. We'd really welcome and encourage that. And normally you do need a bit of help along the way, and I reckon most bankers are going to be willing to help you too. Thank you to the panel here today, to Basil, to Amy and Ian. We really appreciate your thoughts and efforts in being here with us. Thank you.